There are films that explore fear, and then there are films that invoke something older, deeper, something buried beneath centuries of silence. The Serpent and the Rainbow wasn't just another horror flick from the 1,980 seconds. It was an open wound in celluloid, a story that dared to blur the line between myth and memory, between ritual and reality. Directed by Wes Craven and inspired by a non-fiction account, this film didn't fabricate its darkness, it unearthed it. Shot in the politically unstable, spiritually charged terrain of Haiti, the production wasn't merely haunted by narrative ghosts. The crew faced real-life threats, unexplained phenomena, and ritual taboos that Hollywood had no manual for. Actors weren't acting when their eyes screamed panic. Scenes of burial weren't staged in comfort. The very soil beneath them pulsed with a history that refused to stay quiet. These aren't just behind-the-scenes anecdotes. These are warnings. These are fragments of truth hidden behind a movie that never wanted to entertain it, wanted to disturb. These are 20 weird facts you didn't know about The Serpent and the Rainbow, 1988. Fact Hashon. They buried him alive for real. It wasn't a stunt. It wasn't a clever camera trick. During one of the film's most harrowing sequences, when protagonist Dennis is buried alive in a nailed coffin, actor Bill Pullman was actually sealed inside a real box and lowered into the ground. What was meant to be a tightly choreographed moment devolved into a psychological ordeal. Despite safety measures, the humidity, pressure, and lack of oxygen inside the coffin led to Pullman experiencing claustrophobic panic attacks that verged on real psychological trauma. Crew members later admitted they had no real contingency plan if he passed out mid-scene. And Pullman? He reportedly refused to repeat the take, saying that feeling the dirt hit the coffin lid changed something in him forever. Director Wes Craven insisted on realism, but even he later admitted that the decision flirted with danger. The line between method and madness had been crossed. Was it cinematic dedication or reckless cruelty? Or was it the film itself demanding sacrifice one body at a time? Fact #2. The Haitian government tried to shut it down. Before the first scene was shot, the film already had enemies. When Universal Pictures sought to shoot in Haiti, the government, then controlled by the infamous Duvalier regime, viewed the script as a threat to national identity and religious respect. Authorities feared the exposure of real Vodu practices, especially those involving zombification, which were rooted in deeply protected rituals. After reading the screenplay, military officials stormed the production offices, seizing documents and demanding the film be shut down. The crew, fearing for their safety, fled the country. But that wasn't the end. Filming continued covertly at first, then later moved to the Dominican Republic under fake titles to avoid further political interference. To this day, some believe the project was monitored by intelligence agencies, both American and Haitian, due to its portrayal of spiritual warfare and foreign intervention. The film wasn't just a horror story, it became an act of cultural trespass. And sometimes, what you trespass into doesn't forgive. Fact #3. The real zombies weren't in the script. Wade Davis, the ethnobotanist whose book inspired the film, didn't write fiction. He claimed to have witnessed actual zombification rituals where victims were chemically induced into a death-like state, buried, then revived days later. He brought back samples of the powder used in these ceremonies, but it wasn't the powder that terrified him, it was how society treated the resurrected. During the shoot, several Haitian locals approached the crew with warnings. Some claimed the rituals depicted were too accurate, that specific chants in the film mirrored forbidden texts, and that by mimicking them, the actors were calling spirits they didn't understand. Craven initially dismissed it until one night when electrical equipment began failing, seemingly without cause. Sound engineers swore the static they heard contained whispers in Creole, even when no one was speaking. Could it have been paranoia, coincidence, or had the film stopped portraying zombies and started inviting them? You don't need makeup to play the undead when something else is pulling the string. Fact #4. Wes Craven claimed something followed him home. Directors often carry their films with them, but Wes Craven insisted that The Serpent and the Rainbow followed him in ways no other film ever had. In interviews years later, Craven recounted how, after returning from the Dominican Republic, he began experiencing persistent night terrors, cold spots in his home, and electronic devices turning on by themselves. He dismissed the events at first, but when he started seeing the same symbols from the Haitian temples scratched onto his windows, etched into fog on his mirror, he became visibly shaken. One night, he awoke, gasping for breath, his arms pinned as if something sat on his chest. He hired a spiritual practitioner, not a publicist, to deal with it. The production company refused to comment, claiming it was a personal matter. Hollywood loves ghosts, but Craven wasn't promoting a movie. He was confessing something. And when a horror director looks afraid, maybe it's time to stop calling it fiction. Fact #5. The voodoo priest who walked off set and cursed the film. To ensure authenticity, the production hired a local Vodu priest as a consultant. He agreed to supervise the ritual sequences on one condition, that the filmmakers not reproduce one specific chant, known only to initiated members of the secret society. But the script supervisor ignored the warning. One version of the chant made it into the shooting script and into the actors' lines. When the priest discovered this, he reportedly stood up, walked to the center of the set, and in front of the entire cast, smashed a bottle of rum at his feet and said a single sentence in Creole. He then walked away. He never returned, and no one ever translated what he said. Within a week, 2 crew members were hospitalized, one with seizures, one after a car crash. Cameras malfunctioned. A shipment of exposed film was inexplicably fogged, ruined. Was it all a coincidence, or did the film invoke something that didn't appreciate being misquoted? Fact #6. The studio wanted more gore but got something else entirely. Universal Pictures initially saw The Serpent and The Rainbow as another shock horror cash grab, riding the wave of 80-second supernatural thrillers. Early development notes pushed for more blood, more graphic death, and even a reshoot of a beheading scene. But Wes Craven resisted. He argued that the true horror wasn't gore, it was the loss of control over your body, your mind, your identity. And in that refusal, the film evolved into something slower, more cerebral, and deeply unnerving. The result? A film that didn't play like Evil Dead or Hellraiser. It played like a documentary that got too close, a camera that lingered too long in the wrong ritual. Some test audiences walked out, not because they were bored, but because they said the film felt cursed. In trying to make a horror movie, they may have made a spiritual autopsy. Fact #7. The crew heard drums at night from nowhere. During filming deep in the rural outskirts of the Dominican Republic, multiple crew members reported hearing drums echoing through the jungle every night after rap. Not tribal music, not background ambiance. These were ceremonial rhythms, hypnotic and methodical, sounding too close to ignore, yet no one could trace the source. Security teams searched the surrounding area but found no instruments, no gatherings, no footprints. And the moment they left, the drums resumed, louder. Some locals told the crew not to ask questions, that the spirits were watching the production. Others claimed a nearby Vodu society had begun nightly rites to ward off the film's presence. Even Wes Craven began documenting the drumming in his personal journal. One entry simply read, "Same rhythm, same hour, no origin." In a film about the boundary between life and death, maybe something was drumming to remind them it hadn't gone unnoticed. Fact #8. Bill Pullman didn't remember shooting a key scene. Actors forget lines. They don't forget entire scenes. But Bill Pullman did. When asked in a later interview about a specific, emotionally intense moment where his character undergoes a drug-induced spiritual breakdown, Pullman hesitated, then admitted, "I don't remember filming that day. I don't remember being on that set." The footage exists. He's clearly acting. But according to crew reports, his mannerisms were different, as if he were reacting to something off camera. The director didn't call cut for several minutes, letting the cameras roll as Pullman murmured phrases not in the script, some in Creole, which he had never studied. The editor later noted that the footage felt possessed, like it belonged to someone else entirely. Was it dissociation under stress, or something slipping through while the actor wasn't looking? Fact #9. A scene was cut because test audiences got sick. There was one sequence so disturbing, it never made it past the first cut. Described in production notes as the burial within the burial, it featured a dream hallucination of Dennis being buried alive inside his own mind, surrounded by decaying corpses whispering in Haitian patois. Test audiences didn't scream, they vomited. Several people left the theater mid-screening, and one audience member reportedly suffered a panic attack and collapsed. The studio panicked. The scene was pulled, never released, and only a few still frames have surfaced online, grainy, reddish, like corrupted film stock. Wes Craven fought to keep it. The studio refused. It crossed a line, they said. But the question remains, what exactly did they see that a horror studio found too real to show? Fact #0. The real zombie powder was confiscated by customs. As part of his research, Wade Davis, the real-life ethnobotanist whose book inspired the film, brought actual samples of the alleged zombie powder back from Haiti. The substance was said to include pufferfish toxins and hallucinogens, that could induce a state of death-like paralysis. But when Davis attempted to deliver the powder to a lab in the US, it was seized by customs. No official explanation was given. The compound was never returned. Rumors swirled that the US government intervened, fearing the implications of a substance capable of faking death and inducing submission. Some believed intelligence agencies wanted to study it, others believed they wanted to bury it. The film hints at this storyline, but what it leaves out is that the real story was redacted not by filmmakers, but by authorities. When fiction imitates classified science, it's not always the studio that censors it. Fact Hassanon. The script changed after a night of possession. One morning, screenwriter Richard Maxwell arrived on set and immediately demanded a script revision, not a tweak, a full rewrite of an entire ritual sequence that was scheduled to shoot that afternoon. When asked why, he claimed he had been visited in a dream by a woman with no eyes, wrapped in white, speaking in a language he didn't recognize. She showed him an alternate version of the ceremony, one with specific gestures, symbols, and rhythms. He woke up drenched in sweat, wrote the new pages, and refused to explain further. Craven was intrigued. He shot the scene exactly as written. Later, when the crew screened the footage, a white figure appeared for 2 frames standing behind the main character during the ritual. No actress had been placed there. The set was closed. The editor tried to cut around it. Craven told him, "Leave it in. Maybe she wanted to be seen." Fact Hassan 2. The coffin scene was almost fatal twice. The infamous burial scene didn't go wrong just once. It went wrong twice. During an early take, the coffin's support cables snapped, causing it to tilt violently underground with Pullman still inside. Dirt poured in through the cracks. His oxygen tube kinked. The crew scrambled to dig him out. Later, during the reshoot, a sound technician misfired an atmospheric smoke charge, releasing a burst of ash into the coffin's air supply. Pullman began choking violently. The footage shows him clawing at the lid before blacking out. Production halted for hours. Medical staff advised the team to replace the scene with green screen. Craven refused. He believed the terror had to be visible in the eyes, not simulated. But after that day, Pullman allegedly developed a chronic nightmare disorder, one he didn't have before the shoot. Sometimes, it's not the role that scars the actor, it's the insistence that the nightmare must be real. Fact Hassan 3. A stuntman quit after a dream and refused to explain. Midway through production, one of the film's lead stunt performers abruptly walked off set and refused to return, despite a lucrative contract. When pressed, he said only that he had experienced a recurring dream the night before, being buried alive with his mouth sewn shut, surrounded by laughing shadows in priest robe. The next morning, when he woke up, his jaw was locked for several hours. Doctors found no physical explanation, no injury, no nerve damage, but the man never worked on a horror film again. Before leaving, he told a producer, "You're not just filming this movie, you're participating in it." No one tried to replace him. Some roles, it seems, aren't meant to be refilled. Fact Hassan 4. The film was banned in several countries. Silently, while The Serpent and the Rainbow was never officially added to major censorship lists, it mysteriously disappeared from theatrical lineups in multiple countries. Brazil, Nigeria, parts of Indonesia. Inquiries sent to regional distributors came back with vague answers. Technical delays, supply issues, distributor conflict. But internal memos later surfaced showing that religious and cultural advisory boards had privately requested the film be pulled, citing its dangerous portrayal of real spiritual rites. Even more strange, in some of those regions, the film was still illegally distributed, but with specific scenes cut or distorted, particularly the ones involving ritual chants or burial. When governments don't ban you publicly, but erase you privately, it means you've hit something deeper than offense. You've hit a nerve. Fact Hassan 5. Wes Craven burned the original journals. Wes Craven was a meticulous note-taker. For every film, he kept handwritten journals, tracking script changes, dreams, strange on-set events, even cast dynamics. But when asked years later about the production notes for The Serpent and the Rainbow, he simply replied, "I burned them." Pressed further, he explained that rereading the entries gave him uncontrollable migraines, and he began feeling watched in his own home whenever he opened the pages. He described one page in particular, a sketched symbol he didn't remember drawing that would bleed through every other sheet, no matter what notebook it was in. So he took them outside, doused them in lighter fluid, and set fire to the entire stack. Only one note survives, a single line he emailed to his assistant weeks before the burning. There are stories that shouldn't be remembered. Fact Hassan 6. The rain would only fall on set. During filming in the Dominican Republic, The production team encountered a bizarre weather pattern, daily rainfall that appeared to follow the crew. Locals dubbed it La Sombra Mojada, the wet shadow. They noted that neighboring villages remained bone dry, while the film set often less than 200 meters away was soaked without a cloud in the surrounding sky. Weather experts brought in by the studio couldn't explain it. Radar showed no storms, no pressure drops, no predictable patterns. The rain would start minutes before filming a ritual scene and end seconds after wrap. Cast and crew began joking that the spirits were trying to wash something away, until one night, a grip was found, sitting alone in the rain after wrap, whispering a phrase over and over in Creole. He didn't speak the language. No one knew where he learned the word. Some called it atmospheric anomaly. Others called it a warning you weren't meant to ignore twice. Fact Hasson 7. Someone tried to steal the film's footage, but only the ritual scenes. Weeks before post-production, the studio's film vault was broken into. Nothing was taken except for several reels, marked with red tape, the ones containing footage of the film's most intense spiritual sequences. Security footage showed a figure in a hooded jacket entering the vault, disabling the cameras at exactly 3:03 a.m., a time later identified as the witching hour in Vodu cosmology. The stolen reels were never recovered. Oddly, a week later, an anonymous package arrived at Wes Craven's office. Inside was one of the missing reels, melted, warped, and reeking of sulfur. The rest were lost forever. No one was ever arrested. But some believe they weren't stolen. They were reclaimed. Fact Hasson 8. Bill Pullman wasn't the first choice, but the others backed out without explaining. Before Bill Pullman was cast, the lead role of Dennis was offered to two other rising stars of the late 80 seconds. Both accepted, signed, and later withdrew within days of pre-production, each citing personal reasons, yet offering no specifics. One actor reportedly flew to Haiti for an early location scout, then left that same night, abandoning his hotel room and never contacting the production again. The second allegedly had a nightmare involving a coffin underwater, woke up in a panic, and tore his script to pieces. Universal executives were baffled. Wes Craven was not. He later said, "The film chose its own voice. Everyone else was just trying to survive it." Fact Hasson. The editor went temporarily blind during one scene only. Post-production was nearly complete when the film's editor, working alone late into the night, suddenly lost vision in both eyes. Not permanently, but for the exact duration of one scene's playback. The footage in question involved a close-up of Dennis experiencing a trance surrounded by flickering candles and cryptic symbols. When the editor pressed play, he said he felt a burning pressure behind his eyes. Then everything went black. He called for help. By the time medical staff arrived, his vision had returned. Tests showed no retinal damage, no neurological cause. But what's stranger, a backup editor who reviewed the same scene later noticed a frame that didn't belong an image of a face, not in costume, not in makeup, not in any call sheet. That frame has never been found again. Sometimes it's not what you're watching, but what's watching you back. Fact #20. The final scene was shot in a real cemetery without a permit. The last scene of the film, where Dennis escapes from the clutches of zombified control, was filmed on location in a centuries-old Haitian cemetery. What the audience never knew was that the crew had no official permission to be there. The local government had denied access, citing spiritual contamination concerns. So Craven made a call. They shot the sequence guerrilla style, with a skeleton crew, under cover of night. Locals warned them not to set foot in the northern quadrant of the site, where unmarked graves of Vodu priests were said to be buried. Craven ignored the warning. That night, the lights repeatedly failed. Sound equipment recorded whispers in a language no one spoke. After wrap, one camera operator suffered a seizure and didn't return to the project. Another developed insomnia so severe he was hospitalized. That scene remains untouched in the final cut. You can't always tell which graves are empty, and some stories don't want to be filmed. Bonus fact: the film was screened at a Vodu temple, then never shown again. In a rare gesture of cultural exchange, a private screening of The Serpent and the Rainbow was arranged for a select group of Vodu practitioners in Port-au-Prince after the film's release. It wasn't advertised. There were no journalists, just a projector, an offering table, and a dozen silent witnesses. The organizers hoped to spark dialogue. What they got was silence. The audience didn't react. No gasps, no laughter, no critique. When the film ended, the elder priest stood, approached the screen, and extinguished a single candle that had been placed there as protection. Then he said, "This story should not be told again." The projector was turned off. The reel was packed away. and the temple has never hosted another film since. The print used in that screening, it was never returned to the distributor. Its whereabouts remain unknown. Some films don't end when the credits roll. They linger where they shouldn't have entered in the first place. Some films are made to entertain, others are made to provoke, but The Serpent and the Rainbow feels like it wasn't made at all, it was unearthed. Now that you've seen what was never meant to be shown, tell us, which of these facts disturbed you the most? Do you think the film crossed a spiritual line or simply got too close to the truth? Drop your thoughts in the comment, and let us know which film you'd like us to dissect next, because not every horror ends with the final frame.